Hi everyone, in this video I'll show you the basics of Fusion 360 and all that you need to know to create a CAD model for 3D printing. So this is the environment that you'll be presented with after creating your Fusion 360 project, and it consists of various elements such as this ribbon up here with all the tools and functions required to create and edit your model for this project, as well as various other things such as on the left hand side this project pane where you store all of your project files. You've got this browser here, which is where you list all the elements of your model or assembly. Then you have this view cube on the top right, which you can then use to pivot around to view your 3D model, which is going to be useful later on when your model is created. And there's also this timeline feature at the bottom here, which will come in useful later as you design your model, which allows you to kind of step through the different stages of your model creation. So to begin with, there are two ways to go about in getting your model started. So you can begin with either a 2D sketch using this create sketch, or you can select any one of these 3D models here to have your object started. So right here we'll begin with selecting the box. Of course, this is one of two ways to get your model started. Select the box, and then over here you'll have to select the 3D plane of choice. So we select this one as we want our model to start from the bottom up. So you find your point of origin, and then you can decide, let's say you want to do this with 60 millimeters, which you can enter with your keyboard, and then you want the other measurement to be 30. So once that's done, you'll then be prompted to select the height of your object. So let's say we do it at 45 millimeters, and there you'll have your first 3D object, which you can then do things to. You can add features or edit it or modify it to kind of get it to the object that you want. Now we'll also do this the other way. We can start by creating sketch. Of course, we'll select the same bottom facing plane that we want. We get this to the right orientation. So let's say we want to we want to start with a circle instead this time. We find a starting point. Let's select this one. And we set the diameter to be 50 millimeters. Now you can just type 50, it'll be the same. Finish sketch once you've gotten your circle or your shape in. And what you want to do afterwards is to use extrude, which converts your drawing into an object with a 3D profile. So let's say you want to go for 100 millimeters. You can even mouse your way up there and select OK, and this is where you have your object. So once you have this, let's say you want to do more things here. You can continue to create a sketch, select this face, and then you can create another circle. Let's create a square instead, a rectangle. So we can have this 20 by 30, and once you have this, you can then extrude again. So this is part where you can notice that when you have this, and when you select extrude, you can do a few things. You can extrude this outwards with a joint operation here, or you can do this to in fact cut. So as you do this, you can actually create quite a deep hole. So let's just try a 5 millimeter cut. So these are all the different features that you can do to kind of influence how your object, how you want to shape your object. So let's undo that. I want to try something else instead. I want to create another circle, but this time I'll do it at 40 millimeters. So once that's done, I'll extrude this, bring this down, and actually I want this to be precisely 95. So I have an object that kind of looks like this. So when you do have this, usually at this point, you can continue to create more objects. Of course, most of what you need to use are all within here, both the create and the modify sections. You have this fillet, which is a very useful tool, very useful function, which you use to create rounded corners. So here we select this corner. We want to give this a bit of a round edge. So let's say 5 mm of, no, that's too much. let's say 3 mm of rounded edge. The reason why you want to have this is you want to ensure that the model that you print is going to be safe for touching, and you won't cut your fingers if the edge is too sharp. So this is what fillet is for, is to round the corner. So let's do another one. You can press your F key on the keyboard for the shortcut, and then let's do 2 mm of filleting here. So once you have something that looks like that, we will then use another feature called the shell. And this is one that's actually quite interesting, because what this does is it creates a cavity in a solid object. So you can choose your face, of course, over here, it says face. So select this. Over here you select thickness of how you want the insides to be. So let's say 5 mm. No, I can go even thinner, 3 mm. Press OK, and now you will have what would probably seem to be a pen holder with a certain thickness and a hollowed out inside. With the use of this timeline here, you can actually step back some of the steps that you have done. So let's say you've done this shell, you don't want that anymore, you can just move back and that shell will be gone. So right now I'm able to alter the model once again. At this point you see that there is this tool called extrude here, and there's also a tool called press pull. So press pull is generally used on various curved surfaces to kind of edit the actual the dimensions, so to speak. So in a way you can actually use press pull to alter the diameter of any circular object or curved surface just by selecting that surface and then altering it. So at this point there is another cool feature that you can actually do to change the way that your model looks here in Fusion 360, which is this option down here under display settings. You're able to kind of change the way you see this model. So right now it is shaded with visible edges only. You can in fact change to a wireframe, which will allow you to see any edges that are not really visible. And what this allows you to also see is exactly how your model might look like with let's say once you've done this extrusion. You can see that this invisible edge that you're otherwise not able to see is just like that. You can now see it with the wireframe. So let's make a second pen holder with this block that we have. Of course, with this block there is a lot that you can do. So you can start with, what I'm going to do is to start by creating a sketch, and I'm not going to select any one of these 3 planes. I'm going to select a flat surface to start my sketch on. So it is important to remember that you can only draw on flat surfaces. You cannot draw on curved surface, so that means you cannot select that to make a drawing. So I'm going to do another rectangle. Of course I'm going to do one, but only with a partial height, so let's say 30. Finish sketch. I'm going to then extrude from here. Now sometimes it is a good idea to kind of keep in mind this window. If let's say you want the extrusion to be a continuation of the block itself, make sure that it's in joint. So this will be an extrusion of 25. Now let's keep that 20. So now you have a bit of a step out. Now there are a few things that we can do here. So we want to kind of give this shape a bit of an interesting feel to it. Right now it's just a boring square angular object. We want to give it a bit of a mix of different edges. So there's this feature called chamfer, and what chamfer is that you are essentially cutting a 90-degree corner into one that is angled. So let's start with this surface. So you can do an equidistant chamfer like 5 mm, and it will give you an angled edge like that. Or you can do one where you have 2 different distances, 2 distances like that. This is the one that I kind of like the most. So 10 on one side, 5 on the other side. So I have that. and I'm going to repeat that for the other edges. So right now I have a bit of an angle to the objects that I have, and I'm going to continue with a fillet. So this is where it begins to look really interesting. So the good thing about fillet is that you can actually select multiple edges at once. So I'm going to select these 4 edges that I want to edit. So let's say we give this a, oh my god, oh that's not so, okay, 20. Oh no, that's not, doesn't work. 15. Okay, 15 seems like to be a good number. Let's do that. We'll fillet another time with the other 4 sharp edges that we've not touched yet. So this we should do a 5 perhaps. So once this is done, we can then use, there are a few ways that you can do this. So we can make use of this shell feature, one of my favorite features really. Have a thickness of 3 mm, 3 millimeters, and oh yeah, that works. Okay, so let's have a wall, an inside thickness of 3 millimeters. We have that. Okay, very nice. Of course, when you're doing 3D printed objects, it is also quite important to keep in mind that you should have a decent amount of thickness to the object that you're printing. So I'm going to do a little something different. So of course this is one big pen holder. Of course I want to divide it a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this inside edge. I'm going to draw a rectangle off of this perspective that I have. 3 millimeter wide wall. And one that extends all the way down. So finish sketch. Extrude, select this sketch that you've just done. And sometimes you, instead of pulling, you can in fact just select that next surface and it will match the length accordingly. So there you have a divided pen holder. Of course, a few more improvements that we can do. We can just give this a bit of an additional fillet down there. Let's say 3 millimeters. And now you have. Now let's continue to edit it a little bit more. Okay, so right now you have 2 pen holders ready, and at this point, once you're satisfied with your model, you can then prepare it to be exported for printing. So in this instance, we have more than one object, of course, within the workspace. So if let's say you just want to export this particular model here, all you have to do is to switch off the visibility of the models that you don't want exported. Then once it has been limited to just this, go to File, Export, choose your destination of choice, and you will then be all set with your STL file. And once this is all done, you can check your file over here, which will point you to where you've saved your file. So opening it up, just if let's say you do have an STL file reader installed, you will be able to then see your model, and this is the one that you can then send to your slicing software to prepare for your model to be 3D printed.